Yeah, so I live just outside of Boston, in a town called Milton, and in Boston at Harvard Medical School, I'm the Kennedy Professor of Neurology, meaning the Kennedy family endowed the chair long ago. And at Mass General Hospital, so my research basically covers both. How to mainly, how do we stop Alzheimer's disease? I've dedicated my career to that, and I'm mainly known for my work on Alzheimer's and having discovered the first Alzheimer's genes long ago and developing model systems to study the disease. And now I have drugs and natural products and trials, and one of the trials was just successful, and so that's my day job. And then I don't know how long all these medicines are going to take to hit the market and help people. So I'm happy to write books with Deepak about what you can do right now with your own life and your lifestyle to try to stay healthy, and hopefully never get to the point of needing the drugs that I'm developing for brain disease.
That's a short introduction of Mr. Rudolph E. Tanzi. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, Rudy. You can call me Rudy.
Rudy. Oh, that's nice. I like Rudy. So Rudy is one of the co-authors to this book. In English, it's called The Healing Self, and in Swedish, Vägen till självläkning. It's a book that you have written together with Deepak Chopra, and it's not the first book you have written together with him, right?
Right. This is our third book, and more or less the books we have written are like a trilogy. The first book, Super Brain, was making the point that your brain is an organ that works for you, that brings you your world. And it's up to you to decide on the world you want to live in by wiring the networks of your brain that are very, what we say, neuroplasticity, meaning that they can be wired the way you wish. So how you interpret experience, how much you celebrate self-awareness and wholeness of self, mind, body, spirit, will determine how your brain brings you your world. So we like to tell people, don't let your brain use you, be the user of your brain, let your brain serve you. And the second book was the same theme, but on genetics. So Super Genes said, well, you can't really help the DNA and genes you inherit from mom and dad, but think of that like clay that you get to sculpt. And how you sculpt your gene activity and your gene programs starts with your brain and the choices you make and the habits you have, because your habits program your genes. And based on how you program your genes, you're either programming yourself to fall apart someday of inflammation or getting a disease, or you're programming your genes to keep you healthy. And that starts with the choices you make and your lifestyle you choose. And then the third book, The Healing Self, that we're talking about today, is the culmination of all of the suggestions from Superbrain, Supergene, and into a higher realm that says the word heal comes from the word whole. So to be whole is to heal.
Tell us a little bit more about your friendship or relationship with Mr. Chopra. We weren't able to have both of you on here, so we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Because usually they want Deepak because he's more famous, but that's
Yes, but then again, it's good for Sweden to get to know you then.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it. So Deepak and I met about 10 years ago. And it was at a meeting that was a TED type meeting called TED Med. So it's a TED for medicine. And he and I were speaking in a session together on aging. So I was talking about the biology of aging and the brain. Deepak was talking about spiritual aging. And Quincy Jones talked about being an aging musician. And Frank Gehry talked about how his architecture, he's a famous architect, and Frank Gehry talked about how his architecture was changing as he got older. And the theme was, as you get older, if you embrace it and you are celebrating all of the wisdom you've achieved with every experience you've had, that you actually can do much better as an older person in accomplishments and achievements than even as a younger person. Mm-hmm. It's all about choosing. The theme always is choice. You always have a choice. And it's about choosing to live a full life, to continue to be driven and motivated to do the things that might help and serve the world, make you happy. Mm-hmm. And those two go together. to continue to have that desire, that passion to do things, rather than becoming apathetic or having ennui that comes, with getting older and saying, well, I'm going to die, at some point soon, so why should I do anything? So the idea is to reverse that and say, no, this is the best time of my life. And mostly, and this is what we talk about in our 3 books, it's about always deciding to use your brain. And remember that your brain is an organ that serves you, that you are not your brain. You are not your genes. You're the sculptor of your genes. You're the sculptor of your brain. And the way you sculpt your brain, which brings you your world, or sculpt your genes, which brings you a lot of your health, is with the choices you make every day about how you're going to live your life. And so every single moment you have to remember you're making choices about lifestyle. And choices create experiences. And experiences then shape who you are, but you have to also remind yourself you are not your experiences. You need to step away from this idea of saying I am what I'm experiencing. And we made a point in Superbrain, for example, that if you see a red car, your brain is bringing you the vision of a red car, and you say I see a red car. You wouldn't say I am a red car. Right? You don't associate. You're smart enough to not associate yourself to say I'm the red car. But if the red car drives through a big puddle of mud and splashes it all over your face, and you become very angry, you might say, I am angry. Well, there's nothing different here. Now your brain brought you the feeling of anger. That's what the brain does. It brings you sensations. It brings you the recall of memory and imagination at night in dreams. It brings you feelings and emotions. It brings you thoughts. Dan Siegel calls it SIFT, sensations, images, feeling, thought. And so you have to always remember that no matter what's happening, your brain is just an organ that's bringing you the world. And it's up to you in a self-aware way to decide how to use that information with the next choices you make. So to say I am angry is just as ridiculous as saying I am a red car. You just say, okay, my brain brought me the feeling of anger, okay? And now, just like the red car went by, the anger went by down the road.
Oh, it doesn't sound very hard to interpret that into life when you say it like that.
Yeah, you have to remember that your brain is just an organ bringing you
Experience.
Through electrochemical signals, bringing you experiences. But you're not them. You have to always sit on that mountaintop.
Do you live by this rule?
I try, but every single day you don't. I mean, no one can ever think that it's like enlightenment. It hits when you choose it. There's no such thing as being enlightened, and there's no such thing as always living this way. Every day you wake up, you have to remind yourself to do it, because evolutionarily, in evolution, the hindbrain, which is the instinctive brain that just wants you to survive, well, that part of the brain has had 400 million years of evolution, 400 million. And the poor little frontal cortex and prefrontal cortex that gives you self-awareness and the idea of creativity and altruism and connection with the world is only 4 million years old. So, if you just don't do anything, if you're just not at the rudder of the ship and you just let the ship go where it wants, that 400 million year old hindbrain is going to tell you there's only 4 things to worry about: fight or flight, food, and sex. That's it. That's all the hindbrain wants. Don't get beat up, know when to get what you need, eat food, and reproduce. That's the instinctive brain. But that same instinctive brain can be the driver, the force of motivation and drive to say, I want to do something. Just like those instincts are so strong, you rechannel it to say, okay, I'm going to do something else. Now you use the 100 million year old brain, midbrain, that's desire, passion. I really want to devote myself to this cause. Like people who are on the streets protesting and Black Lives Matter right now around the world, they're devoted to that cause. They're driven by the anger of what happened in these police cases. But the truly good ones, the truly valuable ones, aren't looting or causing problems in cities. They're using their frontal cortex to say, how can I best do this in a way that serves people? How can I be connected to the world with love, service, using creativity and self-awareness, so that this very young part of my brain that's only 4 million years old can make me a happier and better person and the world a better place. You have to work for that to happen. That requires making choices voluntarily and deliberately every day. If you're not making choices every single day, then you're going to go to the instinct and you're not going to be happy because it's going to make you sick. And the healing self says, make the choice to be whole, because healing and whole is the same thing. And that means being whole with the world, connected to your world. And you know, the key word here is service. The biggest secret in the world is that you're happiest and healthiest when you're serving, because that's when you're celebrating the self-awareness that says, I am part of a connected world that I want to make a better place, which would be a better place for me to live in as well. But that means lifestyle choices every single day. So every day you wake up, you will fall back into the instinctive brain. It's just the way it is. You will never just, but every day, you can only choose yourself to choose to make choices. Choose to make choices. That's how I like to say it.
Do you have a way that you remind yourself of this every morning you wake up?
It varies, you know. I just mostly just say, you know, I might wake up and after having certain dreams where my brain has taken memories and fictionalized them into little movies called dreams that are helping me to consolidate memories together with the feeling that comes with it, you know. So all night I'm in this drama that my brain's creating for me, in and out. And when you wake up, you might be happy, you might be upset, you might be disturbed. It depends on your dreams. So depending on how you wake up, there might be a different way to have to stage yourself to say, okay, how do I get on track? Well, for me, it's very simple. I just say, my mantra is to wake up and say, love and service, action. Action brings joy. Love and service and action brings joy. Love and service and action brings joy. So that's the easiest one if I'm stuck. Otherwise, they kind of differ depending on how I wake up. But you have to also choose. I like to say choose to make choices, because if you're not making choices, then the experiences you have are going to be random, like playing roulette, and they may either make you sick or they may make you well, but you can choose experiences that will promote health. And that usually means experiences that promote wholeness, well-being, connectivity with yourself, your mind, body, spirit, and connectivity with the world. And the easiest way to do that, there's just two things, and it's the same word, serve and observe, or observe, okay? Wake up saying, if I serve, then, and I'm not trying to impress, I'm not having expectations of other, I don't have this need for external validation. I know that I'm serving and my intentions are pure to make this a better world. That makes the body happy. That makes the brain happy. To serve, what you have to do is observe, right? And that means that you have to constantly be observing, what's my brain doing right now? It's bringing me anger. Oh, it's bringing me jealousy. Oh, it's bringing me resentment. Oh, it's bringing me happiness. Oh, it's bringing me a memory of my mom. You know, just sit on that mountaintop and observe what your brain is doing, because that's going to control the rest of your body, your genetics, and super genes, like epigenetics, how your genes are programmed to bring you health or not. So it all starts with serving and observing, because that's the easiest way to remember it.
Yeah, that's a good 2 words to remember.
Yeah.
So
be the server, be the observer.
Exactly. That should be easy, right? Looking at what you do, you have had or have great impact in the science and research about neurological disease and the genetics in contact with that, right? So what are you actually doing? What are the discoveries that you can find? Can you give us some hope and news about Alzheimer's and other neurological diseases?
Yeah, you know, at the end of each of the 3 books I wrote with Deepak, I put an epilogue chapter in on Alzheimer's disease and like an update of where we're at, because that's what I do for a living. Is I, back in the 80s and 90s, I discovered the first Alzheimer's disease genes, and now what we do is we use these genes to learn about the process of this disease, and we recreate it now in mini human brain organoids in a petri dish. Mm-hmm. So we used to use mice a lot. We still do, but mice are not good models for humans. Plus, I happen to be a vegetarian and don't want to use animals if I don't have to in the lab. So we're very happy to create a non-animal model where we can build mini human brains in a petri dish, little brain organoids.
Petri dish.
In research, you have a petri dish is a little dish you would normally grow bacterial cultures in, or how they check if COVID is present. So instead, picture a plastic plate, or picture a tray with 96 little paper punch-sized wells in it. And in each one, we're growing some gel with neurons in it that are communicating with each other like a little mini brain. We call it an organoid. And what we could do is put the genes I discovered and others discovered into those neurons. These are human stem cell derived neurons, and they're growing in the same type of gel as the brain. And they actually make connections and fire and talk to each other. And Deepak and I sometimes say, I wonder what these little neurons in a paper-sized punch brain, mini brain, are talking about. Is that consciousness? We can go there all day. But what we could do is put in the genes that cause Alzheimer's, and then we can recreate in 1 month an entire lifetime of changes in the brain that would lead to Alzheimer's. And because we can do it, in such a small format, we can then test every drug, every natural product that we want to see what will stop the different parts of the pathology in the brain. And it turns out that the same pathology in the brain that causes Alzheimer's is the pathology that accumulates with just about everyone with age. So age-related brain decline involves the same pathology that reaches a very high point to cause Alzheimer's disease. So we can learn what drugs, what natural products bring it back down. And what we've learned is that there's a pathway that gets you to Alzheimer's and a pathway that brings your brain function down with age. But at the end of the day, what causes the most damage in the brain is inflammation.
Okay.
Just like inflammation in the body, but this is called neuroinflammation. And so the healing self is really mostly about how to stop inflammation in your body and brain with the choices you make about lifestyle. And while in my day job, I'm finding drugs and other natural products, whether they're Ayurvedic or Chinese herbs or whatever, what's out there already that's safe, that will work. And we could never do this before, because if you test one drug at a time on a mouse, it takes a year, it's expensive, and it's a mouse. And the mouse just isn't a good model for a human. But now you can do like a paper punch-sized brain with one drug, 96 per plate, with a whole plate 6 inches long. And, it made screening for drugs and natural products that can help us 100 times faster, 100 times cheaper.
You kind of hacked research.
Well, yeah, you just made it faster and better. And, this has been, I started with finding the genes, and then I started with understanding how the genes cause the disease. And then so now I need a model system where I can screen drugs and natural products right away to see what will work. In the meantime, that all takes time. So the books I write with Deepak Chopra say, well, while you're waiting for us to get our act together and come up with these new medicines or supplements you might be able to take, and we do the trials, here's what you can do every day to mainly reduce inflammation in your brain and body, because that's the killer. Yeah. And so at the end of the healing, the second half of the healing self is the 7-day action plan, which means that there's 7 things you need to do. And each day you just focus on one of them. So each day of the week you focus on one, just to make it simple. And we're relying on superbrain and super genes to say, if one day a week you're focusing, for example, on the right diet or on getting the right amount of sleep, that by practicing this weekly, eventually the brain starts to rewire, and you literally rewire your neurons in your your neuronal network differently so that you might now seek the ways to get good sleep or seek the ways to eat a good diet. And then that in turn, so that was some superbrain. Then that in turn will program your genes and their activity. So you might have 1,000 different genes that now are being turned up and down like a network that are being chemically modified. That's what epigenetics is. That's what we talk about in super genes, where you chemically modify based on your thought patterns in your brain and your lifestyle. You're chemically modifying your genes to be turned up or down 1,000 genes at a time and creating new genetic networks that if you give it enough time, let's say 2 months, 3 months, focusing on rewiring the brain, now those genes go into autopilot. The brain goes into autopilot, gene goes into autopilot. Now, every single day, you wouldn't think of eating junk food. You wouldn't think of not getting enough sleep. You wouldn't think of not meditating. It becomes a part of who you are because you're reprogramming yourself at the level of the brain and your genetics. So the healing self uses the tools of superbrain and supergenes to reprogram yourself to live a life that promotes healing, and then it's automatic. That's how the trilogy works together.
In Sweden, we don't have super genes or super brain yet.
Oh, well, it's available in English, and most everybody speaks English there. So,
of course, but we can also start with the healing self and get interested in the other books to dig
well,
deep.
if you read the healing self, what you need to know from superbrain and super genes is there. So you can do a deeper dive into each one with superbrain and super genes, but what you need to know from the earlier books is all reiterated in the healing self. Yes.
So if we just boil it down, can we assume or can we hope that if we follow this path of the healing self, can we hopefully avoid neurological diseases like Alzheimer's, for example?
So as it turns out, if you look at the genetics, in Alzheimer's disease and in other age-related diseases, there's a similar pattern, which is in the case of the genes involved with these diseases, 1% to 2% of the mutations or variations in those genes that predispose to the disease, only 1% to 2% guarantee the disease. And there we have to make medicines because we call those fully penetrant genes, meaning the mutations guarantee onset. Even if no matter how you live your life, you're going to get the disease, and we know about what age you're going to get it. But luckily, that's only 1% or 2%. And one of the biggest projects I've been doing for the last 20 years is developing a new drug that will reverse that group of genes, that small 1% or 2% of mutations in Alzheimer's. So we have a drug that reverses that. It just basically takes what those mutations do and those genes that guarantee Alzheimer's, and it reverses it. And after 20 years of hard work, that drug is going into clinical trials next year, starting with safety trials. And we're hoping that finally these families I work with, where it's, it's so heartbreaking. You're meeting with someone in the family who's 30 years old and just had a child, and she found out that she's guaranteed to get Alzheimer's by 45. When her kid is 15.
And how do they find that out?
It's genetic. You can do genetic testing for those mutations that we found. So, I've sat in my office more than once with a young lady or man who has a child who's an infant or toddler, and they know, and they have to tell them that in 15 years, there's a 100% chance you're going to have Alzheimer's disease. So that's brutal. And that's why we have a drug now that if it's safe, based on everything we've learned, how we developed it, it should reverse that disease, which would be amazing. If I do only one thing, that would be amazing.
Yes, it's amazing that you found the genes from the start, right?
Yeah, that was back in, the genes that caught that 1% or 2% of genes that guaranteed the disease we found actually I found the first one as my doctoral thesis at Harvard as a student, and then the second two a short while afterwards. And I found many other genes, and then the latest set of genes I found tell us how the inflammation occurs. Those earlier genes told us about the initial events that occur, like what are called plaques and tangles in the brain, how those form. But they form early, and you have to hit those early. But when inflammation is in the brain, that's what kills the most nerve cells. So I found the first inflammation Alzheimer's gene in 2008. And then that led me now to my current work, which is how do we stop neuroinflammation in the brain? Because that's how you help a patient who's suffering right now.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, if you find drugs that stop neuroinflammation, they will work on Alzheimer's, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease. All these neurodegenerative brain diseases have in common different pathways to get you there, but at the end of the day, it's neuroinflammation that does the killing. And so if you can stop the neuroinflammation, or if you can protect against it, then you treat them all. And I can tell you, when is this interview going to be? I need to make sure I don't break in a bog.
9th of September, we're launching.
Okay. I can tell you that in early September, we will have a paper published in New England Journal of Medicine, which is the highest clinical journal in the world, where our trial with drugs for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, that protect against neuroinflammation worked. So we've had the first successful trial in ALS in a long time, and we're going for approval now, both in the US and Europe. And that came out of this dish model that we have, where now we can rapidly screen for drugs that are already approved, or natural products or supplements already approved or safe, and put them together in combinations rather than reinventing new chemicals. So that's a trial. And then I have other trials that are ongoing. And so the medicines are coming. The drugs are coming to stop the early part of the disease, like the one for the 1 or 2% of gene mutations that guarantee the disease. And the other one's to hit inflammation. But the good news is this. What I really want to say is that the good news is that in 98 to 99% of cases, genetics predisposes you to a disease, but does not guarantee the disease. Yeah. So lifestyle does matter. In fact, just
you can push that towards the disease if you live in a non-healthy way or don't follow and increase neuroinflammation.
Right. So you may have a gene variant that predisposes you to Alzheimer's. For example, there's a common gene variant called APOE4. It's in 20% of the population. Oh. If you inherit one of those variants from mom or dad, you have about a 3-fold increased risk for Alzheimer's in your lifetime. If you inherit 2 of them, if mom and dad both give you one of those variants, you have a 12-fold increased risk. But it does not guarantee the disease. It's not like those early onset familial mutations that guarantee the disease. You can still do something about it with lifestyle. So that means you have to be even more proactive with the 7-day action plan we talk about in the healing self to minimize inflammation. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have inflammation, if you don't have neuroinflammation, you will not get the disease.
Exactly.
Now, in the case of the early onset genes that guarantee the disease, they create so much damage that inflammation cannot be stopped with lifestyle. You have to do that with a drug. But again, that's only 1 or 2% of cases. In most cases, lifestyle can be used. So when I had to do some lectures on the healing self and I had to encapsulate the 7-day action plan, I came up with an idea actually in the shower. I keep a notepad in the shower called Aqua Notes.
Oh yeah,
that's great. It's like this paper that's kind of rubbery, and you can write in the shower. And the pencil says, "Don't let those good ideas go down the drain." And so, because when you're in the shower, you're getting into that meditative type theta state with the water on your head, and you get all kinds of good ideas. And then you go, and then you open the shower door and go out. And you're like, what was I thinking about? Because it was really good, but you can't remember. So you write them down while you're in there. So at that time, I came up with an acronym for the action plan that I called SHIELD. So SHIELD, and I actually tweeted out SHIELD, and it went crazy, went viral. And then now SHIELD has been on everything from the NBC Nightly News, the Today Show, Dr. Oz TV shows. Now, a lot of people know SHIELD. And SHIELD is, the S stands for sleep, as in get 8 hours, even if it's not, it doesn't have to be continuous sleep. Just every time you have a dream cycle, your brain cleans itself of the material that can drive Alzheimer's later. So like the amyloid plaque and the tangles that start the disease process going. The initiating pathology gets cleaned when you sleep. H is handle stress, meaning stress is a killer. Chronic stress causes chronic inflammation in the body and brain. So that means, learning how to deal with stress, learning how to not be reactive. Even if you're getting sick, it's your resilience. It's how you react to that so that you figure out ways to adapt and not let your overreaction instinctively make you sicker, right? You return to a state of balance and wholeness. So you can do that with meditation. You can do that by choosing to serve rather than impress. When we mean to impress, we're putting pressure on ourselves. We're looking for validation from others. There's expectation. And that creates a lot of stress. But when you're only choosing to serve, you can never be stressed. So observe and serve. I is interaction. Loneliness is a risk factor for brain disease. Not being alone. If you're alone and like it, it's great. But if you're lonely, meaning you're stressed out by being alone, that can cause damage. E is exercise. So we know that even a half hour of exercise a day, and it doesn't have to be crazy exercise, just move, get on a bike or take a walk, brisk walk. Exercise induces the birth of new nerve cells in the brain, especially the parts of the brain that get affected in Alzheimer's. We had a big paper about that in my lab in Science magazine about a year ago. And exercise reduces inflammation. And it even clears away that same pathology that starts brain disease. And L is what we're doing right now, learn new things, right? I like to say when I'm lecturing to my students, when I get to L, I say, well, you're learning new things, so I'm helping you with your brain right now. But if I'm putting you to sleep, I'm still helping you, so that's fine.
Because
so the thing is that in all diseases of aging, whether it's a movement disorder like Parkinson's or a memory disorder like Alzheimer's, it's the loss of synapses that causes the disease. In other words, at the end of the day, how many synapses you lose is what determines when you're going to have symptoms. Synapses are the connections between the nerve cells. So you have 100 billion nerve cells making trillions of connections, creating a neural network. So every experience you have is shaping your neural network with new synapses. When you learn new things, you make new synapses rather than just strengthen the ones you already have. So what can happen is you get older and you get more set in your way and you're less flexible and you're more rigid. Just like in Taoism, it says the reed that's flexible survives the wind, the rigid one breaks. Well, if you're never learning something new and you're just set in your way, constantly just strengthening the synapses you have stronger and stronger, you become the brittle reed that can break. Yeah. If you're learning new things, you stay flexible, you stay plastic. That's why we call learning in the brain neuroplasticity. So learning new things is creating synaptic reserve. And I like to say that as you get older, the more synapses you make, the more synapses you can lose before you lose it. So It's like money in the bank, right? D is diet. And we talk a lot in all three books about Mediterranean diet being the best, less meat. I'm vegetarian, but if you're not vegetarian, more fish than meat. I know in Sweden you have a lot of great fish dishes there.
Have you been here?
I've been to Sweden many times. Yeah.
Oh,
I love it in Sweden. I was in a meeting in Stockholm just a year and a half ago, and I love Stockholm, and I've been in different parts of Sweden many times. It's one of my favorite countries, I have to say.
Next time you give me a call, I will show you to a great fish restaurant.
Okay, well, I'm vegetarian, but
vegetarian restaurant.
but you show me other things. But it's funny, when I'm in Sweden, I feel like I'm at home. There are very few countries in the world where I say I could live here, and I would say of all the countries I've been to, Sweden is the one where I say this feels like home. I could live here, and so I really love it there, and love Stockholm, especially in June. So you have trillions of bacteria in your gut that are keeping your body healthy. and those bacteria have to be in balance with each other. And if certain bacteria are allowed to take over and be opportunistic and take more real estate, for example, the bacteria that are favored by junk food or too much sugar, too much fat, too much alcohol, if certain bacteria take over and you have imbalance in the bacteria in your gut, that will lead to inflammation in the body and neuroinflammation in the brain. So your brain health, it's incredible how much we're learning about how brain health, especially neuroinflammation, the main killer with age, depends on a healthy gut. So how do you keep your gut healthy? Well, most people say, oh, I take probiotics. And that's okay, eating yogurt, taking probiotics. But 100 or 1,000 times more important is keeping the bacteria you already have there happy.
Yeah.
And that means feeding them a plant-based diet. They love nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruits, fiber, all kinds of plant fibers. So we have a whole section in the Healing Self about exactly which foods to eat to keep your gut bacteria happy, which then keeps your brain healthy. So that's the final D in SHIELD diet.
That's a great 7, SHIELD. Yeah.
Yeah, it's six recommendations, even though it's a 7-day action plan. But in the 7-day action plan, the last one is evolution, which means more like the spiritual side of evolving. If we had to add a 7th to SHIELD, it would be serve. Because as you evolve to serve and use love and positive thinking as your guide, this keeps the brain and body healthy. So you could say the S in SHIELD is both for sleep and service.
That's great. That's easy. You know, we need these kind of steps and programs that we can easily remember and also remind ourselves every day. So when we wake up, we know exactly what to do, right?
Right. So every day you have to choose to make choices. And the choices you make, if you want to keep the body healthy, need to serve the SHIELD acronym. Mm-hmm. Planning to get enough sleep, dealing with expectation and the need for validation from others and self-importance, and instead saying, if I serve, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. Handling stress, meditating every day, staying social, exercising, learn new things, and eat a diet that helps your gut bacteria, because if you help them, they'll help you.
That's the Healing Self in a nutshell.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. Oh. But in the book, we had this in the 7-day action plan. We give very specific instructions of what you need to do each day of the week to reinforce part of SHIELD, so that eventually over 2 or 3 months, it becomes automatically. You wire the brain to do this automatically. That wires your gene networks to do this automatically. And believe me, you know, some people say, oh, you can't change your brain. You can't change your genes. Well, this is science. This is real. This isn't like wishful thinking or woo-woo. This is real, that you do change your brain with your choices you make. You do program your gene expression. You're not changing your DNA, but you're modifying your DNA to control your gene expression for health or not. And it's in your hands. The main message here is that your health is in your hands. Yeah. Don't play roulette or gamble with it and just hope to stay healthy. Take charge.
So in this book, the reason I fell for this, I'm the publisher. I choose what books to translate into Swedish. So the reason why I fell for this book was partly because of the test that you do in the beginning. So you do like a self-evaluation test. And then also for the program, of course, a lot of very heavy but easily digestible information, but also the 7-day action plan where you can actually change your life if you just follow these steps. So it's easy, but it's not easy, you couldn't say that, but it's very informative and very helpful for your life.
It becomes easy. It's celebrating the flexibility of your genes and your brain, such that if you make the right choices every day and stick with it, it only takes about 60 days of reprogramming your habits to then automatically stay healthy every day. I mean, that's a pretty powerful thing when you think about it. You can automatically stay healthy every day by just reprogramming yourself with the right choices and habits in 60 days.
Just before our interview, I sat with this book together with my aunt. She is 68 and she's the twin sister of my mother. And she said, "Oh, this is very interesting, Alex." And I said, "Well, you can have this book once I'm done with the interview." So what could you say to her? I mean, she's 68. Can she still impact her life?
It doesn't matter how old you are. In fact, the older you are, the better, because you're wiser and you have the gift of experience. And if on top of having that gift of experience in life and wisdom, you then choose to be flexible, you choose to learn new things, you choose to be open-minded, you choose to develop new synapses, you choose to make choices every day rather than rote decisions. The thing you don't want to do is get into a rut and do the same things every day. You know, picture like in your brain, these synapses like wires stuck together. And every single day, if you just do the same thing and never do anything different or think something different or try something different or exercise or you don't get enough sleep, the same connections, it's just adding what we, solder when you solder the wires together. You're just soldering the wires together stronger. So you just have a limited number of wires connected and you're just adding more and more of that solder to keep them together. And eventually those synapses will break. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows if you keep adding solder to two wires stuck together and eventually with time, like an old speaker or an old amplifier, they break. It's better to make millions of new connections, keep it fresh. And the way you keep it fresh is staying social, serving others, choosing love, choosing a good diet. So your genes are now promoting healing, programming your brain to keep you happy. You know, we talk in the Healing Self about a very important experiment that Ellen Langer at Harvard did, where she had men who were 81 years old, and this was in 1978, and she had them live in a house for a week where they believed, they would be led to believe it's 1959.
Yes.
So they're 81. So, and this is, they're living in a house where it's 20 years ago. So on TV, there's all the things are on TV then. It's the same food, the same appliances. It's a house from 1959 that they're living in for a week in 1978. The control group were 81-year-olds who went into a house that was today's TV, today's radio, today's things. And they were told to just to reminisce, just to talk about 1959. Mm-hmm. And the people who actually lived in the house like it was 1959, when they did all kinds of measures of aging, from eyesight to posture to a whole a physical assessment, they had become younger. By believing they were younger, they became younger. So you have to choose to want to believe you are still young, flexible, and fresh. You combine that with the wisdom of a 68-year-old, and you're living in the best of all worlds. So it's even better that someone older does this.
That's great. I will tell her. So there are a few short ones here. So just, you have now the Swedish readers in front of you, right? So what would you give, what truths would you like to tell them about? And what hopes would you like to give them as regards to health? And
I would just say, don't believe that as you get older, you become unhealthy. Don't believe that whether you stay healthy or not is like gambling on a roulette wheel. You don't have to leave it to chance. In 98 to 99% of cases regarding the genes you've inherited for this disease or that, in 98 to 99% of cases, your lifestyle does make a difference. The choices you make about how you live your life. And you need to choose today that you're going to be healthy. You need to choose a lifestyle where you actually make choices every day that keep you healthy. And this is what we teach you in the Healing Self. And the beautiful thing is when you choose to do this, if you do it every day for just a couple of months, your brain and your genes will be reprogrammed to take care of the rest of it. You just got to get yourself into that autopilot for about 60 days of training. And that's what the action plan at the end of the book does. So for 98 to 99% of us, your lifestyle will determine how you age. And you're in command. And most people don't think that. Most people think it's inevitable that with age you get sick and you break down. And it's not true. It's just all up to you to be proactive and to use the drive of the brain, the desire of the brain, the dream of the brain to keep yourself in a state of wholeness, connectivity, observing mind, body, spirit together. Every day you have to start over. That's the thing. Just because you had a good day yesterday doing it, the next day you start over. It's like, when they talk about alcoholism, that every day is a new day. You stayed away from alcohol yesterday. Well, the next day is going to be as hard as it was when you began, because every day you wake up, you have to choose to do this and remind yourself to do it and be proactive. That's why you meditate. When you meditate, you can start with an acronym of, I'm going to observe myself today. I'll be the observer of the world. I'm not going to identify with my experiences. I'm going to stay on the mountaintop observing what's happening to me. How is my body and brain interpreting it? I'm going to make my own choices. I'm choosing to make choices about my lifestyle every day. And the power of love is so strong. I know it sounds hokey, but it's true that when you choose the power of positive thinking, love, and service, you serve yourself. And this is probably the biggest secret.
So what is the next book you will write?
I'm talking to the publisher about writing SHIELD itself. So yeah. I came up with the SHIELD acronym after the Healing Self to encapsulate the 7-day action plan. But I think writing a book in detail about the science that backs up SHIELD and more detail about how to practice SHIELD every day. And the second part of the book will be about what's called the default mode network of the brain. So most people don't know about this, but there's a network of your brain that gets reinforced when you are very selfish. So in other words, when you're expecting of others, you're upset, you want the world to be your own way, like as we get older, it's my way or the highway. As you become more and more rigid, that rigidity is programmed in the default mode network that really creates who you are, for better or for worse, personality-wise. And it turns out that the more active that network is, the more Alzheimer's pathology you get, because Alzheimer's pathology forms and spreads in that network. That's why Alzheimer's removes who you are. So that's why it's important with meditation to let go of ego, let go of all your expectations, let go of the way you think the world should be. And I'm upset because that person didn't respect the way I think it should be, right? As we get older, that happens. We become more set in our way. As you become set in your way, that's driving pathology in your brain. So the second part of the book is to how to be young again, nimble, flexible, and turn off that default mode network as often as you can. How do you turn it off? Service, meditation, and stay busy. Task-driven.
Don't use pension.
There's this saying that the idle mind is the devil's playground. Well, when you're in the idle mind, that is the default mode network. You're just, ruminating about who you are and what you want and who you should be. Maybe you're upset about this or that. That's how Alzheimer's pathology can be driven, because that's where the Alzheimer's pathology is forming in those synapses. So the more you turn off the default mode network with meditation, staying busy, task-driven, serving others, practicing love and service. And I'm not trying to say that people who have Alzheimer's, were selfish or too self-indulgent, because genetics is involved in all these cases. Some people could be more loving than other people or more flexible than others, but genetics just took its course and it wasn't enough. So I would never say that, based on how you live your life, this is how someone got Alzheimer's disease. We're just saying, here's what we've learned. And genetics is going to set the threshold for how much you need lifestyle to help you. So some people need to do more than others.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I have a family history of heart disease, so I have to do more to stave off heart disease. My dad died at 45, his brother at 42, my dad's died at 45.
Wow.
So I'm vegetarian, I don't smoke cigarettes, you know, I do everything I can times 10 of somebody else because of my genetics. So it's different for every person.
Of course. That's hard work, but it's worth it. So I think we have a fantastic interview. We have some very nice tips and advices and suggestions that we can live by, and a lot of reasons to read the full book.
Good.
So Rudy,
well, it's been fun.
Yes, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sorry it took longer than I said in the beginning.
No, it's okay, it's fun. Are you in Stockholm?
I am in Stockholm. I have the archipelago
Yeah.
outside of my window, and we are enjoying
Beautiful.
the last days of summer. You're in Boston.
You know, when COVID's over and my family and I get back to Stockholm, we love to meet you.
I'd love to meet you too. So let's keep in touch, and I will send you this video once we have it edited and nice, and we'll keep in contact.
And thank you for choosing the healing self. I appreciate that.
I'm really looking forward to the launch. Good. Thank you, Rudy.
Okay. Thanks. I look forward to it. Okay.
Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye.